Hello, everyone. Welcome to the guided newspaper reading class. I will be your trainer, Shaurya. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Please let me know if I'm audible to you or not. Welcome to the guided newspaper reading class, everyone. Let me know if I'm audible to you or not. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Let's just take a look at the title of the newspaper reading class. Welcome to the guided newspaper reading class. Today we'll be focusing on this article called How Fast Fashion Can Cut Its Staggering Environmental Impact. So I know that these are some new terms to you. Let us get to explaining them. First of all, as far as the class is concerned, I would like to tell you that in this newspaper reading class, we will come across new words and phrases. We'll come across new vocabulary. So all of that is advised for you to note down on a notebook of yours or to just part of whatever your let's say a diary or sort of maintenance diary that you have, where you note down all the words and phrases which are new to you. All of that can help you with your IELTS preparation by broadening the range of your vocabulary. All right, so today we'll be reading an article from nature.com. It's about how fast fashion can cut its staggering environmental impact. Now, fast fashion, now this is a very new term for you. Fast fashion means fashion, which is not something that's very fast. It's just about changing trends. So, because trends come and go and they change continuously, fast fashion is just trendy fashion. Now, what is fast fashion? It is produced cheaply with using child labor or using some sort of illegal labor to produce clothing. And this clothing is produced primarily in India, China, and Bangladesh, and then it's transferred to the first world countries where it's sold for extremely cheap because the labor costs are extremely cheap to produce fast fashion. Now, because there's so much fast fashion being produced on such a regular basis, it creates a lot of waste, and a lot of that waste ends up in landfills. So, the environmental impact, that means the impact on the environment, the waste that is produced through fast fashion is what is something that needs to be taken care of. Now, here they will be talking about how fast fashion can actually reduce the impact it has on the environment. The textiles industry urgently needs input from researchers to help it embrace the circular economy. So the circular economy looks like this. Uh, you produce something, you put it into the market, you get revenue, and then it comes back to you. So embracing the circular economy here also means that if there is waste generated, that waste is also used to make new things that does not go to waste. And then there can be a complete cycle. So you must have heard of reuse, reduce, and recycle. That is also a circular cycle. The textiles industry needs researchers. So it needs people, it needs research to help with its environmental causes. So I hope everyone is excited to read this newspaper article. Clothes were once used until they fell apart, repaired and patched to be reused, ending their lives as dishcloths and rags. So, there was once a time when clothes were used until they were just disintegrating, they were falling apart, and even then they were repaired and patched up. So even then they were sewed onto, they were repaired, and they were used as dishcloths and oil rags. So dishcloths just used to wash dishes, used to clean the kitchen platform, used for basically cleaning and dusting, and oil rags to, just take away oil from a place or to just clean. So rag is something that refers to a very old cloth. So they were old cloths they were used to clean up, not today. So that is not the case anymore. Excuse me. In high income countries, in particular, clothing, footwear, and upholstered furniture are increasingly frequently bought, discarded, and replaced with new fashions. So, in today's world, in high income countries, in countries such as Australia, New Zealand, the United States of America, all the European countries, and everything like that, there a lot of clothing and a lot of footwear, upholstered furniture. So furniture, when you put some sort of cloth on the furniture, so you must have seen sofas, there is some sort of layer of clothing on the sofa that is called upholstery. Upholstery. So this is a new word for you. I would like for you to remember what upholstery means. Upholstery is just to put a fabric onto something. So upholstered means to put a fabric onto, let's say, some sort of furniture to make it more appealing. Discarded means to just discard something, to throw away something. So clothing, footwear, and upholstered furniture are frequently bought. So they first buy it, and then they throw it away, and then they replace it with new fashions, new trends, which are soon themselves discarded and replaced. And even the trends and fashions are very soon discarded and replaced with other trends and fashions. I hope this much is clear, not very difficult, but you must be learning a few new words here. The proof is there in the data. In 1995, the textiles industry produced 7.6 kilograms of fiber per person on the planet. So in 1995, the textiles industry, textiles refers to clothes or anything relating to fabric. So the fabric industry produced 7.6 kilograms of fiber waste per person on the planet. Now, by 2018, this had nearly doubled to 13.8 kilograms per person. So you see, in a jump from 1995 to 2018, there has been an increase on the amount of waste generated by the textile industry. It has increased from 7.6 to 13.8 kilograms. So during which the world's population has also increased from 5.7 billion to 7.6 billion. So there has been an upward trend in both waste generated and the number of people on Earth, which would also increase the waste. More than 60 million tons of clothing is now bought every year, a figure that is expected to rise still further to around 100 million tons by 2030. So just as time goes on, you see here there was a time jump from 1995 to 2018. The amount of waste produced by a single person is also doubled. The population has gone up by 2 billion, and so is the figure related to the amount of clothing which would be bought every uh, every year. And by 2030, it would be 100 million tons. So that's quite a lot of waste that will be generated by an industry. And because of this, because of the amount of waste that is being generated and the amount of environmental impact that is taking place due to such waste generation, is why research is required into this very phenomenon. Let's read more about this. Fast fashion is so called partly because the fashion industry now releases new lines every week, when historically this happened 4 times a year. So fast fashion, it means that fashion keeps quickly upcycling. So fast just refers to the fast pace of the trends that come and go. And every week there seems to be a new trend. I think social media is one of the greatest contributors, because once we see a lot of people wear a variety of different clothing sets, that does make a psychological impact. And we see people, primarily influencers, uh, propagating a new fashion line every week, and that causes a lot of waste to be generated. Right, so that's why it's called fast fashion, because the trends come and go every week. Historically, this used to happen every 4 times a year, but now Fashion brands produce almost twice the amount of clothing they did in 2000. And most of it is made in China. So you see, a lot of it is made in sweatshops. A lot of it is made in places where a lot of cheap labor is utilized. There's not a lot of regulation on part of the government. So a lot of people just get away with producing clothing for cheap. And there are no labor laws to care for the people who produce this clothing. So most of it is produced in China, other middle income countries such as Turkey, Vietnam, Bangladesh. Worldwide, 300 million people are employed by this very industry. So there is some good side to it because it provides employment, but most of it is done. So most of it is, just a second. Yes, so I hope you're able to see this clearly. It's great. All right, so here I don't think there's any new word that you might have found, or we can just scroll past this. Great. But incredibly, more than 50 billion garments are discarded within a year of being made, according to a report from an expert fashion workshop convened by the US National Institute of Standards and Technology, published in May. So this is just talking about the impact of fast fashion. Let's just scroll past this. Textiles fit into two broad categories, natural and synthetic. So natural is anything that's organic, synthetic is anything that is man-made. The production of those such as cotton and wool, which are made from plant and animal sources, is largely stable, albeit slowly increasing. By contrast, the production of polymer-based fibers, particularly polyester, raced ahead about 25 million tons a year in 2000 to some 65 million tons in 2018, according to the NIST workshop report. Taken together, these trends are having a staggering environmental impact. Now, all of this is pretty easy to understand. So there might be some new words such as albeit. That just means nevertheless. So it's largely stable, albeit slowly increasing. Now, here I would like you to pay attention to the word staggering. Staggering means something that has a profound impact or something that is happening on a very large scale. So it's having a very large scale environmental impact is what it's talking about. So please note down the word staggering. So far we've learned the word staggering, which means having a large scale impact on something. And if we scroll above, we heard the word discarded and also what else? Upholstered. So these are three new words that you might have learned in a span of 10 minutes. Give me a second, please. All right. Now let's take a closer look at the environmental impact according to this article. Take water. The fashion industry, one of the world's largest users of waters, consumes anywhere from 20 trillion to 200 trillion liters every year. So this is a very big figure. So water is quite a scarce resource, especially fresh water is a very limited resource on the planet. Then there are microplastics. So you see there's a lot of wastage related to water. 700 liters of water is required to make one t-shirt. Now, if you multiply that by the amount of, let's say, clothing that's made throughout the world, that comes out to a very, very big amount of water wastage. So it's a consumer heavy industry. It consumes a lot of water, it consumes a lot of resources. Then there's the question of microplastics. Plastic fibers are released when we wash polyester and other polymer-based textiles that make up between 20% to 35% of the microplastics choking the ocean. So choking, there's a new word for you. It's choking. Here. Choking means to take the breath out of somebody to take the breath out of somebody to make it hard for somebody to breathe. Just a second. Yes, so please note down the word choking. So there are small plastic beads, small plastic beads, which are called microplastics, which are released when you wash synthetic fiber clothing, such as polyester and other polymer-based textiles, which make up 20% to 35% of the microplastics choking the ocean. Added to this, so when these microplastics get into the ocean, they're consumed by the fish, they are consumed by the plants, and this makes a very big environmental impact on how the ecosystem is being regulated due to the impact of these microplastics. Added to this are specific chemicals, such as those used to make fabric strain resistant, and the pesticides required to protect crops, such as cotton. So even when you are looking at textiles which are not made synthetically, even if you look at organic textiles, such as cotton, they are made or they are cultivated through the use of pesticides, which also provides a very harmful impact on the natural ecosystem. So I hope this much is clear to you. I think this is a very interesting article, right? Great. Let's move on to the next one. Change is sorely needed. So here's another one. Sorely, S-O-R-E-L-Y. Sorely means that there is a very urgent need for it. So sore is something that hurts. So if you have a sore on your arm or on your leg, if you touch it, it hurts. So it's to that point, it's been pushed to that point that it hurts. And this kind of change is very sorely needed in the fashion industry. So a lot of hard work will be required to embrace more of what is known as the circular economy. So the circular economy is basically like this. It starts from here, it feeds itself into its loop. This will involve at least two things: refocusing on making things that last. So the focus will be on making things that last. So making durable clothing. A lot of the fast fashion that is done or that's made is done through very cheap material. The stitching on it is very cheap. And because it's done so cheaply with the use of not so good materials, the cost of it is cheap, and that's why a lot of people buy it. So if we add to the cost of making high quality clothing and contributing to it in, let's say, contributing to it in a way that it lasts longer, then people will not feel a need to buy clothing as fast as possible, because these fast fashion brands, what do? They make cheap clothing with very cheap material, and this material just disintegrates very, very quickly, and that's why people need to repurchase them quite often. All right. And so encouraging reuse and more rapidly expanding the technologies for sustainable manufacturing processes. So encouraging means to just give somebody motivation to reuse your clothing. At school, you might have heard of this: reduce, reuse, and recycle. These are the three major proponents of living a more environmentally greener lifestyle. So more rapidly expanding the technologies for sustainable manufacturing processes, especially recycling. There's a role for research, both academic and industrial, in achieving these other ambitions. So it calls for research to make it more environmentally appropriate. There needs to be academic research in the theoretical field, and also there needs to be industrial research. So research which is very industry specific to achieve these ambitions of making things that last long, and also which are environmentally sustainable. All right, let's move on to the next paragraph. I hope you're taking down the words that you don't know the meaning of. That's the whole purpose of this slide, so that you can understand, okay, here is some vocabulary that I don't know of. Note down the vocabulary and then try to make use of it in your everyday life. And that's how you will actually expand your vocabulary. Research could begin by helping to provide more accurate estimates of water use. So you saw 20 to 200 million, 200 trillion liters of water is consumed by the fashion industry each year. And that's quite a high number. So first we need to have more accurate estimates. So the estimate is 20 to 200. That's a very large estimate. It could either be 20 or it could either be 200. So we need to conduct more research into narrowing down the gap so that we understand how much water is actually being used. It must surely be possible to narrow the range between 20 trillion and 200 trillion liters of water. There's also work to be done on improving and expanding textiles recycling. Overwhelmingly. So overwhelmingly is a new word. Overwhelming. So overwhelming means something that just overpowers you, something very overpowering. So overpoweringly, used textiles go to the landfill. So in a very large scale, the textiles which don't find use anymore, which people just stop using, they go to landfills. In the United States, the proportion is around 85%. So 85% of the used clothing goes to landfills. Landfills are areas which are dug out where people just put in trash. So the trash just goes into the earth and then they cover it with mud. So all of that trash is not being decomposed. A lot of it is plastic. It's not being recycled. But what's happening is that a lot of it is just creating a lot of waste and it's polluting the environment. A lot of the chemicals are seeping down from the mud, from the earth into the earth's surface, and that is causing problems with groundwater, that's causing poisoning, that's causing soil erosion. All of that is happening because of that. In part because there are relatively few systems that collect, recycle, and reuse materials. So there are not enough systems that can reuse materials. Such recycling requires the manual separation of fibers as well as buttons and zips. So manual means something that is done by hand, something that is done by man. So with hand, you have to take out the fibers, you have to take out the buttons, you have to take out the zips. And that contributes to a lot of labor costs. So it's very, very expensive to recycle clothing. Different fibers are not easy to identify by eye. So just by looking at the fibers, it's not very easy to identify what fiber it is. And overall, such manual processes are time consuming. Machinery is being developed that can help. So it is being done manually right now, but there's also the development of machinery that can help people recognize what kind of fiber is that, and that can ultimately help in looking at what is important. So this is it for the guided newspaper reading class today. I hope you were able to understand words and phrases. I hope you had fun. This one was a bit different. This is a bit more scientific article. This is a bit more, let's say, an article that you might not know a lot about. But as I always say, on this YouTube channel, we try to educate you, and then we try to increase your vocabulary, your just your basic exposure to everything outside of India, your basic exposure to things which are happening in the world. So we simultaneously try to educate you and add words and phrases to your vocabulary so that you transform, so that you grow at a parallel line. So I'll just draw a little diagram for you. This is the knowledge that you're having or that you can learn from what we do. And this is the practical purpose. So there's a simultaneous growth happening. You're learning words and phrases, you're learning the language, and you're also increasing your knowledge about the world. So I hope this was an entertaining live for you. I hope you have a great night. Thank you so much for joining in the guided newspaper reading session. Thank you. I hope everyone has a great night.